हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद।
जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद, जय जय प्रभुपाद।
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव।
जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव गुरुदेव, जय जय गुरुदेव।
निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल।
निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल, नित्य गौर हरि बोल।
हरि नाम संकीर्तन की
जय।
जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So, Mataji, you can recite the verse. First, we will chant the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Tirayet Ashtaprayasha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Om Ajnanatimarantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपदान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे मुगं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लङ्घयते गिरिमित्पातं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं धीरतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरं। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Mataji, you can recite the verse, Mataji.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Yerhi Vavaharajan Sarajaputra Priyavrata Parama Bhagavado Naradasya Charano Aseva Yajna Savagada Paramartha Sadatto Brahma Satrena Dichishyamano Avanitala Paripalanayatmada Atmada Pravaraguna Ganaikanda Bhajanadaya Mandrito Bhagavati Vasudeva Evavyava Dhyana Samadhiyogena Samaveshida Sakalakaraga Kriyakalobo Naivabhyanandat Yadyabi Tadapra Tatmanatavyam Tadathikaranā Atmano Anyasmadasado Abhi Parabhava Manvichamanaha Yerhi Vavaharajan Sa Rajaputra Priyavrata Parama Bhagavado Naradasya Charano Paseva Yajna Savagada Paramartha Sadatto Brahma Satrena Dichishyamano Avanidala Paripalanayatma Ayapnata Pravaraguna Ganai Kandabhajanadaya Sobitroba Mandrido Bhagavati Vasudeva Eva Vyavadhana Samadhi Yogena Samaveshida Sakalakara Kriya Kalabo Naivabhyanandat Yadribi Tadapra Tyapnatyavim Tavyam Tadadhikarana Atmano Anya Smadasado Abhi Parabhava Manvichamanaha. Translation. Sukadeva Goswami continued, "My dear king, Prince Priyavrata was a great devotee because he sought the lotus feet of Narada, his spiritual master, and thus achieved the highest perfection in transcendental knowledge. With advanced knowledge, he always engaged in discussing spiritual subjects and did not divert his attention to anything else. The prince's father then asked him to take charge of ruling the world. He tried to convince Priyavrata that this was his duty as indicated in the revealed scriptures. Prince Priyavrata, however, was continuously practicing Bhakti Yoga by constantly remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thus engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord. Therefore, although the order of his father could not be rejected, the prince did not welcome it. Thus, he very conscientiously raised the question of whether he might be diverted from devotional service by accepting the responsibility of ruling over the world. Purport: Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura has sung Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payeche Keba. Without serving the lotus feet of a pure Vaishnava or spiritual master, no one has ever attained perfect liberation from material bondage. Prince Priyavrata regularly served the lotus feet of Narada, and thus the prince perfectly understood transcendental subjects in truth. Sa Tattva. The word Sa Tattva means that Priyavrata knew all the facts about the spiritual soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the relationship between the spirit soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he also knew all about this material world and the relationship of the spirit soul and the Supreme Lord within the material world. Thus, the prince decided to engage himself only in rendering service to the Lord. When Priyavrata's father, Swayambhuva Manu, requested him to accept the responsibility of ruling over the world, he did not welcome the suggestion. This is the symptom of a great liberated devotee. Even though engaged in worldly affairs, he does not take pleasure in them, but remains always absorbed in the Lord's service. While thus serving the Lord, he deals externally with worldly affairs without being affected. For example, Although he has no attraction for his children, he cares for them and educates them to become devotees. Similarly, he speaks to his wife with affectionate words, but he is not attached to her. By rendering devotional service, a devotee acquires all the good qualities of the Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna had 16,000 wives, all of them very beautiful, and although he dealt with each of them as a beloved husband, he was not attracted or attached to any of them. In the same way, although a devotee may enter family life and act very affectionately toward his wife and children, he is never attached to these activities. This verse states that by serving the lotus feet of the Supreme feet of his spiritual master, Prince Priyavrata very soon attained the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. This is the only way to advance in spiritual life. As stated in the Vedas, Yasya Deve Parabhaktir Yadha Deva Tatha Guru Tasyade Katita hi Arthaha Prakashande Mohatmana. If one has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master, the essence of all Vedic knowledge is revealed to him. Sweda Swadara Upanishad 6.23. A devotee always thinks of the Lord continuously. While chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, the words Krishna and Hare immediately remind him of all the Lord's activities. Since his entire life is engaged in the service of the Lord, a devotee cannot forget the Lord at any time. Just as an ordinary man always engages his mind in material activities, a devotee always engages his mind in spiritual activities. This is called Brahmasatra, or meditating upon the Supreme Lord always. Prince Priyavrata was perfectly initiated into his practice by Sri Narada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Mataji. So I think one of the biggest verses in Srimad Bhāgavatam, one verse, but it's very little complicated to recite, and it's also a very lengthy verse, we can say. Unless we know that little bit of having Sanskrit knowledge or Sanskrit pronunciations, then only we can recite this verse. So Thursday we were discussing about the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, how Parikshit Maharaj has put forth questions to Sukadeva Goswami, that how come a person who is considered to be a Mahatma, who is elevated soul, how he was attracted to family life. And if at all he was enjoying the family life, how did he achieve perfection in the spiritual life? So both are looking contradictory. How he was able to achieve both of them? So this was the two questions which was posted by Parikshit Maharaj to Sukadeva Goswami. Then Sukadeva Goswami starts beginning answer from verse number 5 and 6. Fifth verse already we discussed last Thursday. How he was attracted to the lotus feet of the Sri Krishna, and he was always absorbed in meditating on his glories. So this was discussed in 5th chapter, and in Srila Prabhupada writes, if at all some how we get slackened in devotion is because offending a Vaishnava, or it may be because of Lord's desire. So continuing that, again Sukadeva Goswami is further elaborating how Priyavrata Maharaj actually was exalted in spiritual life, even though he was engaged in the material family affairs. So the translation, we'll read the translation. So Sukadeva Goswami, continuing his reply to Parikshit Maharaj, is saying that King Priyavrata was a great devotee. How he became a great devotee? Because he had his spiritual masters Narada Muni. If you see in Srimad Bhāgavatam, we see that Narada Muni has transformed many personalities. Like we know Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, and there are like the Prachetas, so many. You see throughout Bhāgavatam, Narada Muni was actually transforming many people to the devotional service as a pure devotees. That is the power of a pure devotee. Like we see Srila Prabhupada also went to Western world. They were all like initially hippies, but because they were associated with Srila Prabhupada, they all transformed into exalted Vaishnavas. So that is the potency of the spiritual master. Here also King Priyavrata, he was always associated with his spiritual master Narada Muni. Because of that reason, he has achieved the highest perfection in transcendental knowledge. So this actually stresses the importance of one spiritual guru in the progress of spiritual life. Without spiritual master, it is very, we may understand many things theoretically, but we will not get the strength to practice because we do not have any commitment. We have not surrendered our life to any spiritual guru. So when we take Diksha and we take bona fide instructions from them, then we are more committed and our progress is very quicker by the mercy of the spiritual master. And once he was engaged in with the spiritual master and he was serving him very nicely, he was always engaged in discussing spiritual subjects and did not divert his attention to anything else. So as we are many people, when the mundane people, they are discussing, whenever they gather 4 or 5 people, they immediately talk about current politics, current sports event, current whatever happening in the cine industry or like that. Spiritual people, the symptom is when they are actually coming together, they start discussing about various spiritual subjects. Because, Srimad Bhāgavatam is so exhaustive, so much information is there. So naturally, they discuss about spiritual subjects. And like that here, Prince Priyavrata was always discussing about spiritual subjects. But what happened? The Prince father, actually we know that Swayambhuva Manu, he wants to, actually, because there was nobody to reign the kingdom. So he requested Priyavrata Maharaj to take up the role of the king. Because the citizens has to be taken care. That is the duty of the Kshatriya, to protect and take care of the citizens' well-being. So because there was no king, his father personally requested Priyavrata Maharaj that please take over the position of a king. And because Priyavrata Maharaj was so much absorbed in spiritual things, naturally he was not having much interest or attachment for power, prestige or position, or to rule the kingdom also. Because he was always practicing Bhakti Yoga by constantly remembering Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantasta Dhridavrtaha Namastanta Mam Bhakta Nitya Yukta Upasate. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So, like that here, Priyavrata Maharaj was constantly remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead by practicing Bhakti Yoga. And as we know, similar king also, Maharaj Ambarish, Saiva Manaka, Krishna Padara Vindyo, Vachamsi, Gunanu Varnane. So he was also engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord. Same like Ambarish Maharaj, who was engaging all his senses in Bhagavatam. The description of Ambarish Maharaj description is there. He was also an ideal king. He was ruling the country with taking care of the citizens. At the same time, he was engaging all his senses, all his karmendriya and jnanendriya in the service of the Lord. Similarly, here also, Priyavrata Maharaj also, he was fully engaged in the service of the Lord, engaged all his senses. Therefore, although the order of his father could not be rejected, so in the Vedic culture, whatever the father says, it is given with utmost respect. They don't reject the father's advice. So that was the Vedic culture. So here, we can see he was not able to reject. But the prince internally, he was not very happy to accept that position. Thus, he was very conscientious to raise the question whether he might be diverted from, because why the prince was not interested, he was feeling that he may be trapped by this, taking this responsibility, he may be diverted from devotional service. Because when you become a king, you get a lot of affluences, a lot of respect, and a lot of power and wealth. So when we have a lot of power and wealth, what happens? Naturally, even if you see in the material world, when somebody has a lot of power and wealth, where do they go? They normally engage in sense gratification. So that was the fear King Priyavrata was having, that if I take up this role, maybe I will lose my devotion, I will lose my bhakti. That's why sometimes, even in ISKCON, people have started studying in colleges. They don't want to take family life because they are afraid that if I take family life, maybe I will not be able to practice bhakti that much and, with full intensity. So they become brahmacharis, fully dedicated for the service of the Lord, because they are not like they have the thought that if I take up family life, maybe my bhakti will be hampered. So they commit full time as a brahmachari in the temples. So like that here, Priyavrata Maharaj was a little bit hesitant, because if I take this post, maybe my bhakti will be spoiled. So this is the whole thing which is actually explained by Sukadeva Goswami to the question of Parikshit Maharaj. What was the situation of Priyavrata Maharaj? How much he was exalted because of the association with his spiritual master, and how much he was engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord. But it was due to his request of his father only, he reluctantly accepted the post of the king. Otherwise, he was not at all interested internally to take up that post. So let us go to the purport. So Prabhupada quotes here from Srila Narottama Das Thakur Bhajan, Chariya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payeche Keva. Without serving the lotus feet of pure Vaishnava or spiritual master, no one has ever attained perfect liberation from material bondage. Very, very important instruction. How one can actually attain liberation. We have to serve some Vaishnavas. It is said that even if you are now in the path of bhakti, that we have did some ajnana sukriti, that somehow or other we did some seva to some Vaishnava in this birth or previous birth. That has brought us to this Krishna consciousness platform. So if at all we want to become liberated, then we should serve. So same thing, Rishabhadev is also saying, Mat sevam ahur vittaistu tamo dvaram yositam sangi sangam. That means, if you serve the great personalities or Mahatmas, Mat sevam dvaram vimuktaistu. That means your doors for liberation is already opened. But people who are actually associating with tamo dvaram yositam sangi sangam, who are attached to women and wine, and they are intimately connected with those people, then the doors for hell is widely open. So like that, Rishabhadev is teaching to his sons. So same here also, Srila Narottama Das Thakur says that if at all we get a opportunity to serve the pure Vaishnava or spiritual master, that is a great blessing for us. And because that will help us to perfect our lives and become free from our material bondage. So Prince Priyavarta regularly served the lotus feet of Narada Muni, and thus Prince perfectly understood the transcendental subjects. And that word, it is indicated in the verse as Sa Tattva. Tattva means the truth. Sa means he understood the full truth. The word Sa Tattva means Priyavarta knew all the facts about the spirit soul, the Atma, Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the relationship between Atma and Bhagavan. That also, Sa Atma, Bhagavan, the relationship between Atma and Bhagavan. And also you know about this material world, Prakriti, and the relationship of the spirit soul and the Supreme Lord within the material world. So this is called real knowledge. Real knowledge means to understand who am I, who is God, what is my relationship with Him, why I am here, and how to go back to God. So that is called real knowledge. Others all called as temporary knowledge or Jada Vidya. So this is Atma Vidya. Thus the prince decided to engage himself only rendering the service to the Lord. So once they get that knowledge, what happens? Immediately their activity will be fully engaged in devotional service, because they know that this is the ultimate shelter for every living entity. So when Priyavarta, my father, who was Priyavarta's, Prince Priyavarta's, King Priyavarta's father was Swayambhuva Manu. Last week we discussed, shown that Srimad Bhāgavatam family tree. So it's coming from Swayambhuva Manu lineage, and then going up to Rishabhadev at the bottom. Requested him to accept the responsibility of ruling over the world. He did not welcome the suggestion that we found already in the translation. This is a symptom of a great liberated devotee. So a devotee, what will be his mindset? Srila Prabhupada is writing here. Even though engaged in worldly affairs, he does not take pleasure in them. They are like lotus flower or lotus leaf. They are the water, but water will not touch them. But remains always absorbed in the Lord's service. Here, absorption means their mind is always absorbed in serving the Lord. While thus serving the Lord, he deals externally with the worldly affairs without being affected. Same example, Krishna also says, gives in Bhagavad Gita that about Patram, about the lotus leaf example is given in Bhagavad Gita, that we should live in this world like a lotus leaf. That we can be in the water, but water should not be, we should not be affected by the water. In that way, we should Patram Pushpam Yuvam Basha. So, for example, although he had no attraction for children, he cares for them and educates them to become devotees. Similarly, he speaks with his wife with affectionate words, but he's not attached to her. So always we try to understand, sometimes people take spiritual life in a negative way. There are two things called, one is called in English called attachment, one is called affection. So affection means showing love and care. Attachment means blind attachment. So we should understand this concept very clearly, that when the spiritual knowledge is given, it is not that we should immediately get, we should be averse to the family members. No, we should show affection to them, because they are also Krishna's property. So we cannot reject them, or we cannot be angry with them, or we cannot. So anything Krishna has given to us, we have to take care of them very nicely. But if you are blindly attached, that is called attachment, is not good, but affection is always there. Because of the nature of the mind, naturally love and affection will be there for family and all. But it should not turn into attachment. And what is the difference between attachment and affection is, if we are more concerned for their spiritual progress, that is called affection. And if you are only concerned for their material welfare and comfort, that is called attachment. Example, Dhritarashtra had attachment towards his son Duryodhana, whereas Kunti Maharani had affection towards his children, Pandavas. So like that, we should understand, if we are more concerned about their spiritual welfare and we are trying to do something for their spiritual progress, that is called affection. In that way, it is now wrong, because you are trying to connect them with God. But only we are concerned, we don't care whether they are developing spiritually or not. We just want to earn more money for them so that they settle well in their life. And they are chanting or worshipping God, that's not a big issue. That is actually called as attachment. So that here, affection is not condemned, but attachment is condemned. So here, Prabhupada writes that a devotee is always affectionate with his family and children, but at the same time, he is not attached to them. By rendering devotion, see here, he's saying that he takes care of the children also nicely to become devotees. Devotees means again spiritual progress. By rendering devotional service, a devotee acquires all good qualities of the Supreme Lord. So this is the blessing a person gets when he is executing devotional service. He will get all the good qualities automatically. No need to cultivate mercy, tolerance, compassion, contentment, satisfaction, and self-control, and truthfulness. No need to control. Like Krishna is telling about these 26 transcendental qualities in chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita. All these qualities will automatically manifest from within the heart of a devotee, because by the power of practicing devotional service. And by the result, what will happen? It will manifest same like good qualities of Supreme Lord. So Lord Krishna had 16,000 wives. We all know that. He rescued them from the control of Narakasura, and then he married them, because there was no other shelter for those ladies. Nobody in society, they will accept them. So Lord Krishna accepted them as his wife. But all of them were very beautiful, and although he dealt with each of them as beloved husband, same time Lord was not attracted or attached to any one of them. Even in Vrindavan, if you see, the Lord was so much intimate with the Gopas and Gopis. But when the call came for him to go to Mathura, immediately he left everyone and went. He was not crying, attached, and he was saying, no, I cannot leave Vrindavan. No. When there was a responsibility for him, he immediately left without any second thought. So even though he was very affectionate towards them, but at the same time, he's not attached. In the same way, although a devotee may enter a family life and act very affectionate towards his wife and children, he is never attached to these activities. So this is a very, very important point. The last line in this purport, in this paragraph, is very important. What is actually attitude and mindset of a devotee? A devotee may enter family life. So family life is not condemned here, because that is also accepted in our scriptures as Grahastha Ashram. So a devotee can marry, enter a family life, and also can be very affectionate towards his wife and children. That is also not wrong. But we should not think this is the ultimate shelter for me, because we cannot take ultimate shelter, because one day the wife has to go, the children will leave us, the wife has to leave us, or the wife will leave the husband, or the husband will leave the wife. That is a harsh reality of this world. So he knows that they are temporarily, as I given to me by Krishna, so they have to take care of them nicely. But ultimately, they cannot protect me, or they cannot give me any this one. Only I can take care of them. At the same time, who can protect them as well as me is Krishna. So he is never attached to this activity. That is a mindset or mood of a devotee, even though he is in the family life. So further progressing, Srila Prabhupada quotes one more verse about the importance of serving the lotus feet of spiritual master. He is quoting a verse from Svetesvatara Upanishad that how to advance his spiritual life is actually by serving the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And he is quoting this verse from Svetesvatara Upanishad 6.23. Yasya deve parabhakti yata devi tata guru tasyaita katita hi artaha prakashante mahatmanaha. So, what is the meaning of this verse? If one has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord and a spiritual master, two things. So, it is always like a train track. Train track has two tracks are there. So, one should have complete faith in the Supreme Lord as well as his Guru also, spiritual master. Then what happens if he is having unflinching faith in the both of these personalities, Supreme Lord and spiritual master? The essence of all Vedic knowledge is revealed to him. Yasya deve para bhakti yata devi tata guru. Prakashante Mahatmana means it will reveal from inside the heart. So that is very important. Maybe we are educated or not educated also. We see in the Vaishnava Parampara, there are many spiritual masters who are not educated. Like His Holiness, His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. His spiritual master was not educated. Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj. But he accepted him as a spiritual master. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj was highly educated. He knows Surya Siddhanta. He was very highly knowledgeable person. But he accepted his spiritual master who was not able to study, was not able to read, he was illiterate. Why? Because he is in an elevated stage. How he was in elevated stage? Because he was connected to his spiritual master. So the essence of all Vedic knowledge was known to him. So even maybe we are educated or not educated. In material sense, if you are not educated, then we don't have any knowledge. But in spiritual life, it is not like that. Even though we may be illiterate, but if you have unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master, then automatically from within our heart, the essence of all Vedic knowledge is revealed. So that's why Srila Prabhupada, when he went to the Western countries, he was studied a normal degree, and a degree in science and chemistry, but he challenged all the scientists there and saying that you people are cheating the public by saying that life comes from chemicals. Can you prove that life comes from chemicals? How can you prove? And he challenged all these scientists. And even one of the scientists was there, Dr. Surup Damodar. So Maharaj, he was from India, was studying America for a PhD in chemistry. So he met Prabhupada, and Prabhupada challenged him, even though he was a chemical scientist actually. So by hearing the challenge of Prabhupada, finally he become surrendered to Prabhupada and become his disciple. So, and he became an initiating spiritual master. So like that, because Prabhupada had complete faith on Supreme Lord and as well as his spiritual master, his Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj. And Prabhupada sincerely served his lotus feet by serving his Vani. What was his Vani? His spiritual master Vani was to preach the message of Bhagavad Gita to the Western world. Prabhupada faithfully executed this work in the old age, but it became into a very big success because he just tried to fulfill the desire of his spiritual master. So these are all, maybe we have to see how it is practically related. Then we can appreciate what the scriptures are saying. We need to cultivate similar unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord as well as the spiritual master. Then automatically the knowledge is revealed from our heart. A devotee always thinks of the Lord continuously. While chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the words of Krishna and Hare immediately remind him all the Lord's activities. So as when the devotee is chanting, he remembers instantaneously the pastimes and the glories of the Lord. Since his entire life is engaged in the service of the Lord, a devotee cannot forget the Lord at any time. See, this is the mood of a devotee. Throughout his life, he does not forget the Lord. And once one of the disciples asked Prabhupada that, is there any time you forget Krishna? Like that, one devotee asked Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, no, in my lifetime, I never forgot Krishna at any time. He's constantly in my mind. Just an ordinary man always engages his mind in material activities. Like a normal person, he is always planning, what should I do now? Where should I put my money? What is tomorrow's activities? What should I do now? His mind always, some thoughts are running. Even though he is doing so many material activities, but his mind is always planning for something, what happened, what should I do, like that. Similar way, a devotee always engages his mind in spiritual activities. Some spiritual activities, like sometimes he may hear a lecture, sometimes he may serve the deity, sometimes he prepares bhoga, sometimes he engages in preaching, sometimes he did some seva like book distribution, like that. Some kind of spiritual activities is always engaged. That is a devotee day-to-day lifestyle. This is called Brahma Satra, or meditating upon the Supreme Lord always. Prince Priyavarta was perfectly initiated with this practice by Sri Narada. So Brahma Satra means that is a practice which was initiated by his spiritual master, whereby a devotee always engages into spiritual activities and constantly meditating upon the Supreme Lord. That is what explained here very wonderfully. Of course, very, very, very elevated stage. That's why these personalities' names are there in the Srimad Bhāgavatam means. That means they are in the very, very elevated stage. That's why their names are in the scripture. The Bhāgavatam, Priyavarta Maharaj name is there means you can understand that he was a very, very elevated devotee was constantly meditating upon the Supreme Lord and was engaging all the senses. And because of his father request, unwillingly he has accepted the kingdom because he need to take care of the citizens. But internally he was always constantly connected to the Supreme Lord in one or other way. So that is what we are understanding from this Sukadeva Goswami's reply to Parikshit Maharaj's question. So absorption, Priyavrata Maharaj was always absorbed, always engaged in Krishna Katha. So here we can note one point that Uttanapada, these are all Uttanapada descendants up to Prachetas had ruled the kingdom of earth. You know, up to Prachetas, they did the tapasya under the water, and they heard the instruction from Lord Shiva, the Rudra Gita, and then they had the Lord Vishnu, darshan of Lord Vishnu also. And then later they got married. But now there was no king for their son Daksha. For Prachetas, they married and they got Daksha, the second birth. But Daksha went for austerities. So Swayambhu Manu, seeing no alternative, wanted to bring Priyavrata back from the forest and make him the king. Thus, Priyavrata and his descent ruled until the 5th Manvantara. And the beginning of the 6th Manvantara, again Daksha came back, gave up his austerity and became the king. Now, next section will be around 7 to 10, where Lord Brahma comes down. Now, already Swayambhu Manu has requested Priyavrata Maharaj. Now, from 7 to 10, 7, 8, 9, 10, 4 verses, is Lord Brahma is arriving. And he is also requesting, actually, Priyavrata Maharaj to take up this task of ruling the kingdom. And he is convincing Priyavrata Maharaj that why he should take up the kingdom. And based on the request of his father Swayambhu Manu and Lord Brahma's request, because they are Mahajana, Lord Brahma, so Priyavrata Maharaj takes up this task of ruling the kingdom. Hare Krishna. I hope we are having able to understand whatever is being discussed. So devotees, please feel free if you have any questions or doubts, or if you have any comments to share on this discussion. Please feel free to discuss. Hare Krishna.
Rishabh Prabhuji, thank you so much for the wonderful explanation on this sloga, Prabhu. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna. Welcome, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So, if there are no other discussion, Mataji, there is time. We can go next one, or next one 7.
So, Prabhuji, 8 minutes only remaining.
Yeah, it is a big purport, Mataji. So, I think we can today discuss only this verse. So, this whole episode, we are seeing this 5-point first chapter is full of activities of Maharaj Priyavrata only. So, first is about Parikshit question about Priyavrata Maharaj. Then Sukadeva Goswami reply about how he was elevated devotee, and how he was convinced by his father and Lord Brahma to take up this service of becoming the king, taking the kingdom. And then based on that, you can see Priyavrata Maharaj accepts the request of Lord Brahma, and then Priyavrata Maharaj rules the kingdom, and then his descendants also there mentioned, and his wonderful activities also there, how his descendants, they divided the Bhumandala into 7 oceans and 7 islands, and they ruled these 7 islands actually. Then, of course, then Priyavrata Maharaj at last, as usual in Bhāgavatam, we know that they get retirement from their kingdom, and then they go for their spiritual perfection. And ultimately, Priyavrata Maharaj activities are being glorified. This is actually 5.1. Whole section talks about all this. In this chapter we will discuss. So there are like total 41 verses in this chapter. All the descendants of Priyavrata Maharaj is also given here in detail. And then after that, from the chapter 2, you will go to the descendants of Maharaj Priyavrata. Who are the descendants and which tract of land they were ruling. And based on the tract of land, then we go to the Vedic cosmology, how this Bhumandala cosmology is there. That is very interesting. Also, the cosmological structure of this universe is described in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhāgavatam in detail, how these various lokas are there, and how it is divided, how the sun is traveling, orbiting around this Bhumandala, and all those things we will discuss in the later section of this canto. Hare Krishna. So devotees like to share something? Shangarnath Murari Prabhu, you want to say something? Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Just hearing.
Okay. So you are able to follow, no, Prabhu? The flow you are able to follow, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how this get in the highest perfection. It's one of the
Yes.
real ideal kingdom. So like role model we are saying. So how the kings to be ruled from the nation.
Yes. In this Priyavarta lineage only, Bharat Maharaj also comes. Bharat Maharaj comes, and Lord Rishabhadev also comes. Lord Rishabhadev is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So Lord Rishabhadev teachings also come in the in this canto. Very powerful teachings. Lord Rishabhadev, and Lord Rishabhadev had 100 sons, and the elder son was actually Bharat Maharaj,
Then
who
Bharat
became
Maharaj,
Bharat Maharaj. Yeah. Sorry, bro.
That first is from Bharat Maharaj. Then next birth is from Jada Bharata. Then
Here, he became Jada Bharat. Third birth, he became Jada Bharat. Yeah, that is there.
This Prabhuji, this Bharat, Rishabhadev's sons, other all 99 sons are together known as, or 7 sons are Yogendra.
Navayogendras, Mataji.
Navayogendra, no, 9. Yes.
Yes. 9 Navayogendras. Some took sannyas, some become Brahmanas, some become Kshatriyas.
Yes.
So like that. And we do, but Navayogendras is there, I think, in 11th canto. They had discussion with King Nimi, which our Chaitanya Chandra was taken the class. So Nimi Maharaj and Navayogendras, they have discussions in spiritual topics. And we have more detailed description about Bharat Maharaj in this canto only. And detailed teachings of Lord Rishabhadev also in this 4th and 5th chapter.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Welcome. So, is there any other question or discussions?
Hare Krishna, all devotees, we all can show our gratitude for the wonderful session by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra for Prabhuji's and Prabhuji's families and all the devotees.
For all the devotees.
Yes, Prabhuji. So we will, for all everybody's spiritual progress, we can chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times, followed by Vaishnava Prana.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.